Good evening. Tonight, we are taking you behind the velvet ropes of the Rose Garden to analyze a moment that historians might look back on as a definitive turning point in the relationship between the executive branch and Congress. We need to start by looking at a very specific piece of evidence. It is a moment that occurred at 4:03 p.m. Donald Trump stepped out into the Rose Garden, but what happened next wasn't just a photo opportunity. It was a collision between prepared strategy and raw, unfiltered reality. His staff had done the legwork. They had prepared a specific script. If you look at the documentation released regarding this event, specifically what is marked as Exhibit 25, you can see the physical document. It is stamped clearly with the phrase, "President has seen." The text was explicit. It was designed to be a de-escalation. The prepared remarks read, quote, "I'm asking you to leave the capital region now and go home in a peaceful way." That was the plan. That was the advice of his legal and political counsel. But when the cameras rolled, Donald Trump refused to read it. Instead, he spoke off the cuff. We have testimony from Eric Hirschman and Nick Luna, who were present for the filming, confirming that the remarks delivered were not the remarks prepared. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why discard the script? To answer that, we have to look at the broader context of what Mr. Trump calls his final warning to Congress. When you strip away the rhetoric and look at the raw mechanics of power in Washington right now, you see a dynamic that has completely flipped. Mr. Trump is standing on the steps, metaphorically speaking, issuing an ultimatum. He is telling Congress that if they do not accept his specific spending cuts, if they do not adhere to his budgetary demands, there will be a government shutdown. He is threatening to pin the blame entirely on the legislative branch. Furthermore, he is issuing a direct political threat to members of his own party. If you defect, if you vote against my priorities, you will face a primary challenge. Now, let's pause here and analyze that term. Primary challenge. In the current political ecosystem, this is usually the nuclear option. It means that an incumbent politician, someone already sitting in Congress, is forced to run against a candidate from their own party, usually someone more extreme or more aligned with the party's de facto leader, before they even get to the general election. For years, this was the ultimate weapon in Donald Trump's arsenal. The mere threat of it was enough to make lawmakers fall in line. But here is the critical question we have to ask tonight. Is that weapon still loaded? When you analyze the numbers, it appears Donald Trump is trying to exercise leverage that he simply no longer possesses. The reality is that his threats, which once moved markets and changed votes, are ringing hollow. Why do I say that? Because Congress has already shown its hand. They have already demonstrated that they have the votes to pass spending bills without Mr. Trump's approval. This brings us to a concept that is absolutely vital to understand: the veto-proof majority. Under the United States Constitution, if a president rejects a bill, vetoes it, Congress can override that rejection if they can muster a two-thirds vote in both the House and the Senate. It is a high bar. It is very difficult to achieve in a partisan environment. However, look at the recent scoreboard. Congress has already passed 8 spending bills. The vote count? 341 to 79. That is not just a majority. That is a landslide. That is 81% of the House voting in unison. That is well above the threshold needed to override a veto. So, when Donald Trump issues a final warning, he is threatening to veto legislation that Congress has already proven it can pass without him. It is a strategic paradox. If he vetoes a bill that passed with 341 votes, Congress will simply vote again, override him, and the bill becomes law anyway. The only thing that changes is that Mr. Trump looks significantly weaker, having taken a shot and missed. Is Donald Trump desperately trying to claw back power? Is he yelling into the void? The evidence suggests that the legislative branch has stopped listening. We are currently looking at a timeline of just 9 days. We are approaching a January 30th deadline. That is the cliff edge. That is when the government funding runs out. Donald Trump claims this is the pressure point. He believes this is the moment where everything comes together, where he can force Congress to bend the knee. But the last few weeks have provided a blueprint that suggests the exact opposite. Congress has established a template: pass bipartisan spending bills, reject the executive branch's specific priorities, and move on. They have done it 8 times. They are likely to do it for the remaining 4 bills. Mr. Trump is in a bind. His final warning is essentially a realization that he has lost the initiative. He is making one last desperate attempt to reassert control before Congress completely takes over the fiscal steering wheel. Now, we cannot talk about this power struggle without discussing the precarious position of Speaker Johnson. Let's look at the math in the House of Representatives. Speaker Johnson is holding on to a gavel with a 2-vote majority. In parliamentary terms, that is non-existent. It is a margin of error, not a margin of governance. If 2 Republicans wake up on the wrong side of the bed and decide to defect, Johnson loses the vote. If 3 defect, he gets blown out. Speaker Johnson is trying to hold together a party that is fundamentally fracturing on spending issues. You have fiscal hawks, you have defense hawks, and you have moderates, all pulling in different directions. And into this fragile ecosystem, Donald Trump throws a grenade: the threat of primary challenges. He is effectively saying to these lawmakers, if you vote for a spending bill I don't like, even if it keeps the government open, I will come after your job. But here is the problem with that threat. It relies on popularity. Donald Trump's approval ratings are currently hovering in the high 30s. He is not the political titan he was in previous years. Lawmakers are doing their own calculus. They are realizing that if they tie themselves too closely to an unpopular figure, they might survive a primary, but they will lose their seat to a Democrat in the general election. To put it simply, the fear of losing in November is becoming stronger than the fear of Donald Trump in the spring. That is a seismic shift in the psychology of the Republican Party. It means Mr. Trump's leverage is evaporating. However, the chaos isn't just coming from the right. We also have to look at the left. There is a progressive revolt brewing that could derail everything, regardless of what Donald Trump does. This centers on the issue of ICE funding, immigration and customs enforcement. To make the spending deal palatable to Republicans, Congress included funding for ICE. But now, progressives are threatening to torpedo the entire deal because of it. They want ICE to fund it. They are threatening to block the vote. If the progressives walk away, the coalition collapses. If that happens, we are right back in shutdown territory. Ironically, if the deal falls apart because of the progressives, Mr. Trump's final warning becomes irrelevant because there won't be a bill on his desk to veto. The situation is chaos. It is a crisis of governance. And Mr. Trump is trying to reassert control over a machine that has broken down. There is a subtle, almost tragic undertone to Mr. Trump's recent messaging. If you listen closely to the subtext of his warning, he is almost begging Congress to accept his cuts. He is implicitly saying, please, accept my terms. Don't make me veto this. Why? Because he knows the outcome of a veto. If he vetoes and gets overridden, it confirms his irrelevance. It is the nightmare scenario for a man who brands himself on strength. The best outcome for Mr. Trump is for Congress to cave. But Congress is not caving. They are moving forward, ignoring the noise from the Rose Garden. Let's dig deeper into the economic implications of this standoff. Wall Street is watching. The markets are nervous. They aren't just reacting to interest rates or earnings reports. They are pricing in political instability. The markets have already been rattled by Mr. Trump's unpredictable rhetoric regarding Greenland and other geopolitical issues. Now, they are looking at a Congress that might not be able to keep the lights on. Market panic creates real-world consequences. It affects retirement accounts, interest rates, and consumer confidence. Mr. Trump's final warning is not calming the waters. In fact, it is acting as an accelerant. By threatening a veto, he is increasing the probability of a shutdown or a chaotic override process. He is injecting uncertainty into a system that craves stability. Instead of projecting strength, he is creating economic anxiety. So, where does that leave us? We have 9 days. 9 days until the January 30th deadline. These 9 days are the final window for Donald Trump to influence the process. If he cannot move the needle now, his influence on this budget cycle is over. He is making threats and issuing ultimatums because he has no other cards to play. If he had real leverage, if he had the votes, he wouldn't need to make a public spectacle. He would just make a phone call. The fact that he is resorting to public threats is, in itself, proof of his isolation. We also have to consider the judicial backdrop. While this legislative battle rages, the Supreme Court is still weighing in on the power to fire Federal Reserve officials. Lower courts are issuing emergency denials on executive orders. Mr. Trump is fighting a multi-front war. He is losing on spending. His authority over independent agencies is being challenged, and his own party is breaking ranks. One final warning cannot fix all of that. It cannot patch the cracks in the foundation. As we watch the countdown to January 30th, we are going to see a test of institutional strength. Will Congress blink? Will Speaker Johnson buckle under the pressure of a 2-vote majority? Or will the legislative branch continue to bypass the executive, proving that the era of Donald Trump's absolute control over the GOP is officially over? The echoes of that Rose Garden address are fading. The script was discarded, but the improvisation isn't working. Donald Trump is standing on the sidelines warning of consequences, while Washington moves on without him. We will be tracking every vote, every defecting Republican, and every maneuver by the Progressive Caucus over the next 9 days. This is not just about a budget, it is about who actually runs the country. Stay tuned.